Amy here, presenter and producer of the Eerie Excursions podcast, the podcast that takes a left turn into the shadows to hear haunted and creepy tales from around the UK, as told by local tour guides and experts. So this is it. Season 2 is finally here. I'm so excited. We've left the days of the hot summer sun behind us and we're heading straight into spooky season. So we've kicked off this season, available now on the YouTube channel, by the way, in London. Specifically, we're actually in the St. Paul's area, which you can see on this map kind of sits east of the city. My guide here was Alan Aspinall, a City of London guide, and he has some amazing stories to tell. So first off, he tells me a bit about the history of London. It's a very brief one, I'll say, because the UK's capital is around 2,000 years old, with its first inhabitants really being the Romans, possibly before them, but the Romans were the ones that called it Londinium, which gets its name London today. Now, London has seen everything from plagues to fires to bombs. So it's a very much scarred city, very much a lot of death and destruction has happened there, as Alan tells me in the episode. But let's zoom in a little bit to specifically the St. Paul's area. So in the episode, the first place we go to is called Greyfriars Church. It's basically pretty much opposite St. Paul's tube station. So if you come out, you kind of go over the road and it's like to the left a little bit. So this is Greyfriars here. It's so beautiful and actually quite peaceful, surprisingly enough, considering where you are. Although if you do see a woman floating around, she may actually be the ghost of Queen Isabella, who is buried there. Now, Queen Isabella, or Isabella of France, or the She-Wolf of France, as she's also known, she was the wife of Edward II, who historians believed was more into men than he was into women. So Isabella is actually said to have had her own husband overthrown, even possibly killed. There's not really evidence of that, but she basically exiled him and put her son on the throne. Like I said, she is buried in this beautiful church and is actually said to haunt it. So you can hear more about Isabella on the episode, of course, but that's just a brief history there. So we then moved on to the Old Bailey, which is still in the same area. So if you're coming out of St. Paul's tube station, you turn left, you keep walking down the road, and I want to say it's the next left, but it might not be, but you'll honestly see it. It's a massive building. As you can see from the picture here, I really couldn't even get the whole building in this picture. So there are quite a lot of stories here because the Old Bailey is known as a central criminal court, and it has heard some of the UK's most serious murder cases, such as the Yorkshire Ripper from the 1970s. There are also a few tales here, but my favorite one, Alan tells me, is about the ghost of a criminal called Amelia Dyer.
As he sat there, though, he had a feeling that he was being watched. Now, he ignored this, carried on working. He wasn't a man of frail nerves, but the feeling got worse. And then he heard a voice echoing from beyond the grave. "See you again, sir, see you again." Scott turned round and looked towards the door that led out to the dead man's walk. In the grate in the doorway was a face pushed up against it.
So the ghost at the end, that face pressed up against the bars, is supposed to be of Amelia Dyer. Now, you can hear more about her story in the episode. I only want to give you a snippet here because it is a really good one. But another creepy tale from this episode happens around the back of the Old Bailey. Now, to get to the back, I believe there is a cut through. You can also go around like the main road. Around the back of it, there are residential houses. So it's like a gated off community. So you can't go too close to the back of the Old Bailey. But from the gate, you can see a wall in the shrubs, which is this picture here. And that wall is said to be the last remnants above ground of Newgate Prison. So, Newgate Prison is probably equally as famous as the Old Bailey. It's been one of the most important prisons in the country and in London in particular during its 700-year history. It was actually demolished in 1904 because it was hugely overcrowded. And anything you hear or read or watch about Newgate Prison is almost always about the overcrowding and just awful conditions the prisoners were made to live in. Now, this story you are about to hear is about the revenge of a prisoner.
Unfortunately for those inmates, it seems like there may have been some truth to this guy being a sorcerer. You see, the day after his death, as the sun began to set, terrible black howls were heard coming from deep within the bowels of Newgate Prison. As the sun slowly set below the horizon, a terrible black hound emerged from the basement. It was described as being the size of a small pony. It had eyes the size of saucers and teeth the size of daggers.
As I've said in the season 1 recap videos, and as I've kept on saying throughout this video, these are just snippets of the episode. So to hear the full stories from Amelia Dyer and the Newgate Prison stories, definitely check out the episode because there are so many stories that Alan told me. To make sure you don't miss another adventure, make sure you subscribe below.